The phone call that shattered my world came on a Tuesday evening in mid-December. I was helping my 8-year-old daughter Lucy with her math homework when my father's voice crackled through the speaker. "Eddie, son, I've got great news about our New Year's trip to Aspen." My heart jumped with excitement, thinking finally this would be the year my kids got included in the annual family tradition. Then came the words that felt like a punch to the gut. "Your brother Marcus and his family are all set, but I'm sorry we can't take your kids this time. It's just too expensive." The casual way he delivered this devastating news, like he was discussing the weather, made my blood run cold. The days following that phone call felt like walking through quicksand. Every step forward seemed to pull me deeper into a realization I had been avoiding for years. My father's favoritism toward my younger brother Marcus wasn't just in my imagination anymore. It was real, calculated, and cruel. The truth started unraveling when I called my mother 3 days later. Mom has always been terrible at keeping secrets, and this time was no different. She was chatting about Christmas preparations when she accidentally let slip about the Aspen trip budget. "Your father is being so generous this year," she said, her voice warm with admiration. $35,000 for the whole family vacation. Marcus was so grateful when your father offered to cover everything for his family." My grip tightened on the phone. "Everything for Marcus's family." There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable silence that spoke volumes. "Oh, honey, I thought you knew. Your father is paying for Marcus, Jennifer, and all 3 of their children. The flights, the lodge, the ski lessons, everything." The math was simple and devastating. Marcus had 3 kids to my 2. If cost was truly the issue, wouldn't it make more sense to limit Marcus's family? But logic had never applied to my father's treatment of his 2 sons. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the stack of bills on my counter. My successful marketing consulting business brought in solid 6-figure income. I owned my home outright, had money in savings, and my kids never wanted for anything. Yet somehow, in my father's eyes, I was the financially irresponsible son who couldn't afford a family vacation. The real gut punch came 2 hours later when my ex-wife Sarah called. Our divorce had been finalized 3 years ago, but she still enjoyed twisting the knife whenever possible. "I heard about the Aspen situation," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "It's really too bad your father thinks you can't handle the expense. My parents have invited Lucy and Michael to spend New Year's week at their estate in the Hamptons. Real luxury, not like whatever budget alternatives you usually come up with." I closed my eyes, fighting back the surge of anger. Sarah's parents were old money, the kind of wealthy that made my middle-class upbringing look humble. They had never hidden their disapproval of their daughter marrying someone from my background. "The kids are spending New Year's with me," I said firmly. "Are you sure?" "Because from what I hear, you can't really compete with what my family can offer. Maybe it's time to be realistic about your limitations." After she hung up, I walked upstairs to check on Lucy and Michael. They were both in Lucy's room playing with the dollhouse I had built for her last Christmas. The sight of their innocent faces made my chest tight with emotion. "Daddy." Lucy looked up with those huge brown eyes that reminded me so much of my late grandmother. "Are we going to see Grandpa for New Year's like Cousin Tommy and Cousin Sarah and Cousin Jake?" Michael, my 9-year-old son, stopped arranging the tiny furniture and turned toward me. "Tommy said they're going skiing and staying in a castle. Can we go skiing too?" I knelt down beside them, my heart breaking. How could I explain that their grandfather had decided they weren't worth the investment? How could I tell them that in his eyes, they were somehow less valuable than their cousins? "We're going to have our own special adventure," I said, forcing a smile. "Something even better than skiing. Better than a castle?" Michael asked, his eyes lighting up with curiosity. "Much better," I promised, though I had no idea what that would be. That night after the kids were asleep, I called my father back. I needed to understand his reasoning, though deep down I suspected what I would hear. "Dad, I've been thinking about the Aspen trip. If money's the issue, maybe I could contribute toward the costs." His response was swift and sharp. Eddie, this isn't about money you can contribute. This is about responsibility and family priorities. Marcus has been working hard at the business, proving himself every day. He deserves this recognition. What about my kids? Don't they deserve to spend time with their grandfather? Of course they do, but timing isn't right this year. Maybe when you get your financial house in order, we can discuss including you in family events. The hypocrisy was staggering. Marcus worked at our family's construction business as a project manager, a position my father had created specifically for him after Marcus dropped out of college. Meanwhile, I had earned my MBA, built a successful independent business, and never asked my father for financial help. But in his eyes, Marcus was the success story and I was the disappointment. After hanging up, I sat in my home office and opened my laptop. If my father wanted to play games about financial capability, then maybe it was time to show him exactly what his supposedly irresponsible son could accomplish. The idea came to me at 3 a.m. during one of those sleepless nights when my mind refused to quiet down. I was staring at the ceiling, replaying every slight and dismissal from my father over the years, when suddenly everything became crystal clear. If he wanted to exclude my children based on some twisted notion of financial worthiness, then I would show him what real financial capability looked like. I crept downstairs to my office and opened my investment portfolio on the computer screen. $28,000 in mutual funds and stocks money I had been carefully saving for Lucy and Michael's college education. My finger hovered over the mouse as I considered what I was about to do. This was either the most liberating decision of my life or complete financial insanity. I liquidated everything. By dawn, I had researched and booked the most extraordinary New Year's vacation I could imagine. Not Aspen with its predictable slopes and overpriced lodges. Not some domestic destination that my father could dismiss as second-rate. I was taking my children to Dubai United Arab Emirates. The numbers on my screen made my heart race. 7 nights at the Burj Al Arab, the 7-star hotel shaped like a sail, private helicopter tours over the Palm Islands, desert safari with falconry demonstrations, shopping excursions to the Gold Souk, swimming with dolphins at Atlantis, VIP access to the Burj Khalifa observation deck. Total cost $31,000. $3,000 more than my father's precious Aspen trip. I spent the next week planning every detail with the precision of a military operation. The hardest part was keeping it secret from Lucy and Michael. They knew something was happening because I kept asking strange questions about their passports and favorite foods, but I told them only that we were going on a special adventure. Can you tell us where Lucy begged during breakfast on December 20th? It's somewhere magical, I said, cutting her waffle into perfect squares. Somewhere with the tallest buildings in the world and golden beaches and adventures you've never dreamed of. Michael bounced in his chair. Are there knights and castles like where Tommy's going? Better than knights, I promised. There are real treasures and flying carpets and buildings that touch the clouds. Their excitement was infectious, but underneath my joy was a growing sense of nervous anticipation. I was about to make a statement that would change my relationship with my family forever. There would be no going back from this decision. My best friend Jake came over on December 22nd to watch a football game and immediately sensed something was different. "You look like someone who just won the lottery or lost his mind," he said, settling into my couch with a beer. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The Aspen exclusion, the liquidated investments, the Dubai booking. Jake listened without interruption until I finished, then stared at me for a long moment. "You spent your kid's college fund on a vacation to prove a point to your father? I spent my kid's college fund on giving them a once-in-a-lifetime experience and showing my father that his assumptions about me are completely wrong." Jake shook his head. "Eddie, this is financial suicide. What happens when they need that money for school?" "I'll figure it out. I always do." "And what happens when your father finds out what you've done?" I smiled, feeling more confident than I had in months. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." The real breakthrough came when I decided to enlist my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, in the deception. She was a retired teacher in her 70s, who had always been kind to Lucy and Michael. When I explained that I needed her help with some misdirection, her eyes lit up with mischievous delight. "You want me to help you pull one over on your father?" she asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I want you to help me create the impression that we're having a quiet Christmas at home, nothing special planned." Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands together. "Oh, this is going to be fun. I'll tell anyone who asks that you three are having a nice simple holiday. Maybe mention that you're watching movies and playing board games, very low-key." On Christmas Eve, I had one final conversation with my mother. She called to check on our holiday plans, and I gave her the performance of my lifetime. "We're keeping things simple this year," I said, making my voice sound slightly dejected. "Just the three of us, opening presents and making pancakes. Nothing fancy." "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry you can't join us in Aspen. Your father really wishes things were different." "I understand, Mom. Financial priorities have to come first." After I hung up, Lucy looked at me with concern. "Daddy, why did you sound sad when you talked to Grandma?" I knelt down and hugged her tight. "Because sometimes grown-ups have to play complicated games, sweetheart. But our adventure is going to be worth everything." 3 days before departure, I received a text message from Marcus that made my blood boil. "Hope you're not feeling too left out this new year? Maybe next year you'll be ready for the big leagues." I stared at that message for 5 full minutes, then deleted it without responding. In 72 hours, I would have my answer to Marcus and everyone else who had underestimated me. The night before our flight, I tucked Lucy and Michael into their beds and sat between them for story time. But instead of reading from a book, I told them about a magical city rising from the desert, where buildings grew taller than mountains, and dreams came true for children brave enough to believe in adventure. "Is that where we're going, Daddy?" Michael whispered. "Tomorrow you'll find out," I said, kissing both their foreheads. As I turned off their bedroom lights, I felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. In less than 24 hours, my carefully constructed plan would begin. There would be no more hiding, no more accepting my father's dismissive treatment, no more allowing my children to feel like second-class grandchildren. Tomorrow we were going to Dubai, and everything was about to change. The look on Lucy and Michael's faces when we walked into Dubai International Airport was worth every penny I had spent. Their eyes grew wide as they took in the soaring architecture, the massive aquarium built into the wall, and the luxury cars on display like pieces of art. "Daddy," Lucy whispered, gripping my hand tightly. "This place looks like it's from the future." Michael was spinning in circles trying to see everything at once. "Are those real gold decorations on the ceiling?" "Real gold," I confirmed, feeling a surge of pride as other travelers smiled at my children's wonder. But their amazement at the airport was nothing compared to their reaction when we pulled up to the Burj Al Arab. The hotel rose from its artificial island like something from a fairy tale, its sail-shaped silhouette gleaming white against the blue Persian Gulf. "We're staying here?" Michael asked, his voice barely audible. "For the next 7 nights," I said, watching their faces as our Rolls-Royce approached the entrance. Ahmad, our personal butler, greeted us at the door with a warm smile and perfect English tinged with a Lebanese accent. He was a dignified man in his 40s who immediately connected with the children by speaking to them as equals rather than talking down to them. "Master Lucy and Master Michael," he said with a formal bow. "Welcome to your palace for the week. Shall I show you to your royal suite?" The elevator ride to the 25th floor felt like ascending to heaven. When Ahmad opened the door to our 2-bedroom suite, both children stood frozen in the doorway. The living area featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Gulf furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, and a dining table set with golden chargers. But the real magic was in their bedrooms. Lucy's bed was designed to look like a princess carriage, complete with flowing curtains and twinkling lights. Michael's room featured a race car bed with working headlights and a bookshelf shaped like a racetrack. This isn't real, Lucy breathed, running her fingers along the silk curtains. Ahmad smiled and handed them each a small golden box. From the hotel management to welcome our youngest guests. Inside were chocolate coins wrapped in real gold foil, along with a handwritten note inviting them to special children's activities throughout the week. As the kids explored their rooms, I stepped onto the balcony and pulled out my phone. The first photo I posted was simple, the view from our suite with Lucy and Michael's silhouettes against the massive window. No caption, no explanation. Just three tiny figures in an impossible luxury. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Comments from extended family members, college friends, and business contacts. Everyone wanted to know where we were and how this was possible. I ignored them all and focused on my children. That first afternoon, we swam in the hotel's private beach area while dolphins played in the distance. Lucy squealed with delight as the warm Gulf waters lapped at her feet, and Michael built elaborate sand castles with the help of the beach staff. In Colorado, I bet Cousin Tommy is cold right now, Michael observed, packing sand into a turret mold. Probably I agreed, taking another photo of them against the backdrop of the Dubai skyline. That evening, Ahmad arranged for us to dine at Al Muntaha, the restaurant suspended 200 meters above sea level. The children were mesmerized by the view of the city, stretching endlessly in all directions, tiny lights twinkling like stars below us. "Daddy," Lucy said carefully, cutting her lamb with the oversized silverware, "is this the most expensive dinner we've ever had?" "Probably," I admitted. "Good," she said with satisfaction, "because it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen." My phone had been buzzing constantly throughout dinner, but I kept it face down on the table. This time belonged to my children, not to whatever drama was unfolding back home. After dinner, we rode the elevator down to the lobby where Ahmad had arranged a special surprise. A traditional Arabic musician played the oud, while a storyteller in flowing robes told tales of ancient traders and magical genies. Lucy and Michael sat cross-legged on silk cushions, completely captivated. Long ago, the storyteller said in accented English, brave travelers came to these lands seeking treasures beyond imagination. Some sought gold, some sought jewels, but the wisest travelers sought something more precious than any earthly riches. "What did they seek?" Michael asked, leaning forward. "They sought memories that would last forever, and stories they could carry in their hearts wherever they went." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. That was exactly what I was trying to give my children. Not just a luxury vacation, but proof that their father valued them enough to move heaven and earth for their happiness. Later, as I tucked them into their fantastical beds, Lucy looked at me with her serious 8-year-old expression. "Daddy, why didn't Grandpa want us to come on his trip?" The question I'd been dreading finally came, and I realized I needed to give her an honest answer without destroying her relationship with her grandfather. "Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense," I said, smoothing her hair. "But what matters is that we're here together having our own adventure." "I think our adventure is better," she said firmly. Cousin Tommy doesn't have a race car bed or a view of flying carpets. After the children fell asleep, I finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, 82 text messages, and countless social media notifications. But the message that caught my attention was from my cousin, Jennifer Marcus's wife. "What game are you playing? Eddie Marcus is furious and your father is asking a lot of questions. You better have a good explanation for this stunt." I typed back a simple response, "No game, just showing my kids the world." Then I turned off my phone and stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights, reflecting off the Gulf waters. Tomorrow would bring new adventures and probably more family drama. But tonight my children were sleeping like royalty in a palace by the sea, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The real confrontation was still coming, but I was ready for it. Back in Aspen, my carefully planted social media posts were creating exactly the chaos I had hoped for. While I was blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding in the Colorado mountains, my family was having their own meltdown at 8,000 feet above sea level. The explosion began on December 30th, during what was supposed to be a peaceful family dinner at the Little Nell Hotel. My father had reserved the private dining room for the entire extended family, Marcus and Jennifer with their 3 children, my Aunt Patricia, and Uncle Robert with their twin teenagers, and my parents. Everyone was dressed in their finest ski attire, celebrating what my father liked to call another successful family tradition. My mother was showing everyone photos on her phone when she innocently scrolled past one of my posts. The image showed Lucy and Michael standing in front of a massive golden fountain, their faces glowing with happiness as water danced behind them in choreographed arcs. "Wait," said Patricia, my father's sister, squinting at the phone. "Is that Eddie's children? Where was this taken?" My mother, still oblivious to the brewing storm, smiled proudly. "Oh yes, Eddie took Lucy and Michael on a little vacation. Isn't that sweet?" Marcus, who had been monitoring my social media like a hawk, felt his stomach drop. He had been hoping I would quietly accept my exclusion and spend New Year's watching television at home. Instead, he was watching his carefully constructed narrative crumble in real time. "A little vacation?" Patricia repeated, taking the phone from my mother's hands. She scrolled through more images, the children eating gold-dusted desserts, riding camels against a desert sunset, swimming in an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the sky. "This looks like the most expensive vacation I've ever seen." My father's face darkened as he recognized the unmistakable luxury in every image. The Burj Al Arab's distinctive architecture was visible in several photos, and anyone with basic travel knowledge would recognize it immediately. "Where exactly did Eddie take them?" he demanded. My mother, finally sensing the tension, stammered. "He said they were having a quiet Christmas at home. These must be old photos." Jennifer grabbed her own phone and pulled up my Instagram account. "These are all posted within the last 3 days," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Look at the timestamps." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. My father's carefully orchestrated family hierarchy was being challenged by the son he had dismissed as financially irresponsible. "Dubai," whispered my Uncle Robert, reading the location tags. "He took them to Dubai." The name hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone at that table knew what Dubai meant in terms of expense and luxury. This wasn't a consolation prize vacation, this was a statement. My father's face went through several color changes before settling on deep red. That manipulative little fool, how dare he try to upstage our family tradition? "Dad," Marcus said quickly, "maybe there's an explanation. Maybe Eddie came into some money somehow." But Patricia was already doing math in her head. A Dubai vacation for 3 people over New Year's week. We're talking serious money here. Probably more than this trip is costing you. The comparison was devastating. My father had spent months bragging about the exclusivity and expense of the Aspen vacation, using it as evidence of his generous nature and successful business. Now, his supposedly broke son was outspending him in the most visible way possible. "The little snake," my father muttered. "He's doing this deliberately to embarrass me." Uncle Robert, who had always been more observant than the rest of the family, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe the question isn't how Eddie afforded this trip, but why he felt the need to take it in the first place." The comment landed like a bomb in the middle of dinner. Everyone understood the implication if Eddie was spending this kind of money on a vacation during the same week his children were excluded from the family trip. There might be more to the story than financial limitations. Jennifer tried to diffuse the situation. "I'm sure Eddie just wanted to give his kids a nice experience." "There's nothing wrong with that. But my cousin David, Patricia's 16-year-old son, was busy scrolling through more of my posts. 'Guys, you need to see this,' he said, holding up his phone. 'Look at how happy Lucy and Michael are in these photos. Like, really look at their faces.' The images told a story that no one at that table wanted to acknowledge. My children glowed with pure joy in every single photo. They looked like kids who had been given the world, not children making do with a consolation prize. "I think Uncle Eddie is proving a point," David said, with the brutal honesty that only teenagers can deliver. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I don't want to hear another word about Eddie's manipulative games. He's trying to make us look bad, and I won't have it." But the damage was done. Other family members were now questioning the narrative they had been fed about my financial irresponsibility. If I could afford a luxury Dubai vacation, why had I been excluded from a family trip on the basis of cost? Patricia, who had never been afraid to challenge her brother, looked directly at my father. "Harold, how long has it been since you actually talked to Eddie about his financial situation?" "Not assumed, not heard through others, but actually talked to him." "I know my own son," my father replied defensively. "Do you?" she pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your son just outspent your vacation and gave his children experiences that will last a lifetime. That doesn't sound like someone who's financially irresponsible." The dinner dissolved into uncomfortable silence after that exchange. My father spent the rest of the evening glowering at his phone, watching more of my posts appear with increasing frequency. Each new image felt like a personal attack on his authority and judgment. Meanwhile, Marcus was dealing with his own crisis. His children were asking uncomfortable questions about why their cousin's vacation looked so much more exciting than their skiing trip. His 8-year-old daughter, Kate, had seen the photos of Lucy swimming with dolphins and wanted to know why they couldn't do that instead of skiing. "Because Grandpa planned a nice ski trip for us," Jennifer explained weakly. "But Lucy gets to ride camels and see the tallest building in the world," Kate complained. "Why is Uncle Eddie nicer to his kids than Grandpa is to us?" The question hit Marcus like a slap. His daughter had inadvertently identified the core issue: my willingness to prioritize my children's happiness over family politics. As New Year's Eve approached, the Aspen vacation continued to unravel. Extended family members were sharing my posts and commenting about how amazing the Dubai trip looked. Some were privately messaging me with congratulations and questions about the experience. My father's friend Robert Coleman, who owned several resort properties, left a comment on one of my posts that made my father's blood boil. "This is what real fatherhood looks like, putting your kids first no matter what." Respect Eddie. The comment was liked by dozens of people, including several family members. By the time midnight approached on December 31st, my father was consumed with rage. While fireworks exploded over the Colorado mountains, he was staring at his phone watching my latest post, a video of Lucy and Michael watching fireworks burst over the Burj Khalifa while standing on the observation deck of the world's tallest building. The caption was simple: "Starting the new year at the top of the world with the most important people in my life." That post broke something inside my father. As 2025 began in both time zones, he made a decision that would change everything. He was going to call me and demand an explanation. January 1st dawned clear and beautiful in Dubai, with the kind of perfect weather that made the desert city feel like paradise. Lucy, Michael, and I were having breakfast on our private balcony when Ahmed appeared with fresh orange juice and a knowing smile. "Master Eddie," he said, setting down the crystal glasses, "today we ascend to the top of the world. Are the young masters ready for their adventure?" Michael bounced in his chair with excitement. "We're really going to the tippy top of the tallest building, 163 floors above the city," I confirmed, watching their faces light up with wonder. We spent the morning at the Burj Khalifa, and I have to admit that even I was overwhelmed by the experience. Standing on the observation deck, looking out at the sprawling city below and the endless desert beyond, felt like touching the edge of infinity. Lucy pressed her face against the glass and declared that she could see all the way to America, while Michael tried to count the swimming pools scattered across the landscape like blue jewels. I took what I thought would be a simple family photo, the three of us silhouetted against the massive windows with Dubai's impossible skyline stretching behind us. The image captured something magical about our adventure, a sense of achievement and wonder that I knew would stay with my children forever. I posted it immediately with the caption, "Starting the new year at the top of the world with the most important people in my life." My phone was on silent mode, tucked safely in my pocket while we enjoyed the experience. I had no idea that back in Colorado, that single post was about to trigger a nuclear explosion in my family. We were riding the high-speed elevator down from the observation deck when my phone started vibrating with an intensity that seemed almost angry. I ignored it, focusing instead on Lucy's breathless description of how tiny the cars looked from so high up. But the vibrating continued, and when we reached the lobby, I finally pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls from my father, 4 from Marcus, 2 from my mother, and a string of text messages that grew increasingly frantic. The most recent text from Marcus read, "Dad is losing his mind. Call him back now before this gets worse." Before I could process what was happening, my phone rang again. My father's name flashed on the screen, and something in my gut told me this was going to be the conversation that changed everything. "Hello, Dad," I answered, keeping my voice calm despite the tension I could feel radiating through the phone line. "How could you do this to us?" The words exploded from the speaker with such force that Lucy and Michael both looked up from the fountain they were watching. Do what I asked, though I knew exactly what had triggered this call. Don't play innocent with me, Eddie. How could you exclude us from your vacation? How could you humiliate our family like this? The irony was so perfect that I almost laughed. I excluded you from my vacation. Yes. You deliberately planned this elaborate trip to make us look bad. You're flaunting your wealth while we're trying to enjoy our family time. It's manipulative and cruel. I walked away from the children, lowering my voice, but not my resolve. Dad, let me understand this correctly. You excluded my children from your family vacation because you claimed I couldn't afford it. So I took them on their own vacation. And now you're angry because I didn't invite you to join us. That's not the point, and you know it. You're trying to show us up, trying to prove some kind of point. What point would that be? That you're better than us, that you can outspend our family trip. It's petty and vindictive. The accusation hung in the air for a moment while I watched my children playing near the fountain, their laughter echoing in the marble lobby of the world's tallest building. They looked so happy, so carefree, completely unaware that their grandfather was having a meltdown over their joy. Dad, I said, finally, I learned about exclusion from the best teacher I ever had. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. When my father spoke again, his voice was different, shakier. What's that supposed to mean? It means that for years you've been teaching me lessons about family priorities, about who gets included and who gets left behind, about who's worth the investment and who isn't. I'm just a very good student. That's not fair, Eddie. You know the situation was about finances. Was it? Because I'm looking at my bank account right now, Dad, and this vacation cost $31,000. $3,000 more than your Aspen trip. So if finances were really the issue, maybe we should talk about what the real issue actually is. Another silence, longer this time. You spent $31,000 on a vacation? His voice was barely a whisper. I spent $31,000 giving my children an experience they'll remember for the rest of their lives. I spent it proving to them that their father values them enough to move mountains for their happiness. And yes, I spent it proving a point to everyone who assumed I couldn't. Eddie, this is insane. You can't just liquidate your savings to prove a point to me. Why not? You've been telling everyone for years that I'm financially irresponsible. I figured I might as well live up to your expectations. That's when his voice cracked, and I heard something I hadn't heard from my father in decades: genuine distress. Son, you don't understand the position you've put me in. The whole family is questioning my judgment. They're asking why I excluded you if you clearly have money. Patricia is furious with me. Robert thinks I've been lying about your situation. Have you been lying about my situation? I've been protecting the family from unnecessary complications. What complications? The pause was so long I thought the call had dropped. When my father spoke again, his voice was barely audible. The business is struggling, Eddie. Has been for months. I couldn't afford to take everyone, but I was too proud to admit it. It was easier to make it about your finances than to admit that mine weren't what people thought. The confession hit me like a physical blow. For months, I'd assumed this was about favoritism and judgment. I'd never considered that my father might be hiding his own financial problems behind his criticism of mine. Dad, why didn't you just tell me we could have figured something out together? Because admitting weakness isn't something our family does, son. You know that. We project strength even when we don't have it. I looked over at Lucy and Michael, who were now trying to catch water droplets from the fountain in their hands. They looked so innocent, so trusting. They believed their father could give them anything, and I had just proven that belief correct. But at what cost? Dad, there's something else you need to know about this trip. What? I liquidated my children's college fund to pay for it. Every penny I had saved for their education is gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Eddie, what have you done? I did what I thought was necessary to prove a point. But now I'm wondering if the point was worth proving. Son, you need to come home. We need to talk about this properly as a family. I looked around the luxurious lobby at my children playing in their designer clothes, at the golden decorations and marble floors that represented everything I had wanted to prove I could provide. We're coming home tomorrow, I said. And when we do, I think it's time for some honest conversations about finances, about favoritism, and about what family really means. Eddie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how this all happened. I know you are, Dad. But sorry isn't going to fix what's been broken here. That's going to take a lot more work from all of us. After I hung up, I sat on one of the lobby's plush sofas and watched my children play. They were completely absorbed in their game, unaware that their magical vacation was about to end and real life was waiting for us back home. Tomorrow we would return to America, and I would have to face the consequences of my dramatic gesture. But looking at Lucy and Michael's faces glowing with happiness and wonder, I couldn't bring myself to regret giving them this experience. The question now was whether my family could find a way to heal from the wounds we had all inflicted on each other. The flight home from Dubai was bittersweet. Lucy and Michael spent most of the 14 hours talking excitedly about their adventures, flipping through the photo album Ahmad had created for them as a farewell gift. But I could see the sadness in their eyes as the magical week came to an end. Do we have to go back to regular life now? Lucy asked as we prepared for landing in Newark. Regular life can be pretty wonderful too, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. When we landed, I turned my phone back on and immediately regretted it. 43 voicemail messages, over 200 text messages, and enough social media notifications to crash the app. But the message that caught my attention was from Marcus, sent just 2 hours earlier. Emergency family meeting at Dad's house tomorrow at noon. Everyone will be there. We need to talk. I spent that first night back in our own beds, trying to prepare myself for whatever confrontation awaited. I had proven my point about financial capability, but at what cost? My children's college fund was gone, my relationship with my father was in ruins, and I still didn't know how to fix the underlying problems that had led to this mess. The next morning, I dropped Lucy and Michael at my ex-wife Sarah's house. For once, she didn't have any snide comments about my financial situation. Apparently, even she was impressed by the Dubai vacation photos. I have to admit, she said as the kids ran inside, that trip looked pretty amazing. Maybe I underestimated your capabilities. Maybe a lot of people did, I replied. The drive to my parents' house felt like heading to my own execution. I had no idea what kind of reception awaited me, but I was prepared for anything from a full family confrontation to complete exile. When I walked into the living room, I was surprised by who was there. Not just my immediate family, but Patricia and Robert, my cousin David, and even Marcus's 3 children. This wasn't just a family meeting, it was a full family intervention. Eddie, my father said, standing up from his usual chair. He looked like he had aged 5 years in the past week. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? I asked, settling into the chair across from him. That's when Marcus cleared his throat and said the words that changed everything. Actually, before we talk about your trip, there's something I need to confess to everyone. The room fell silent. Marcus stood up and began pacing, running his hands through his hair in a gesture I recognized from childhood whenever he was about to admit to breaking something. The reason Eddie was excluded from this trip, the reason Dad has been treating him differently, the reason our family is falling apart, it's my fault. My father looked confused. Marcus, what are you talking about? Dad, I've been lying to you about Eddie for years. Every time you asked about his work at family gatherings, I told you he was struggling. When you wondered about his financial situation, I suggested he was living beyond his means. When you considered business partnerships or family investments, I convinced you that Eddie wasn't reliable. The room erupted in shocked murmurs, but Marcus continued, his voice getting stronger as the confessions poured out. I've been feeding you lies because I was jealous. Eddie has his MBA, his successful business, his independence. Meanwhile, I'm 35 years old and still working for my father because I dropped out of college and never figured out how to make it on my own. My mother gasped. Marcus, why would you do such a thing? Because I was afraid Dad would realize that Eddie was the successful son and I was the failure. So I sabotaged Eddie's reputation to protect my own position. Patricia, who had been listening with growing anger, stood up. Marcus, do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed your brother's relationship with your father over your own insecurities? But Marcus wasn't finished. His next confession was even more devastating. There's more. Dad, the business isn't just struggling because of market conditions. I've been stealing from the company accounts to cover gambling debts. I'm into underground poker games for over $60,000, and I've been using business funds to make payments. My father's face went white. What did you just say? I'm broke, Dad. Worse than broke. If those guys don't get their money, they're going to hurt my family. I've been taking money from the business for months trying to stay ahead of the interest. The silence that followed was deafening. My Uncle Robert was staring at Marcus like he was a stranger, while Jennifer looked like she was going to be sick. That's why you couldn't afford to include Eddie's family on the trip, Patricia said, putting the pieces together. You weren't protecting the business from Eddie's irresponsibility. You were protecting Marcus from the consequences of his gambling addiction. My father sank into his chair, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. Marcus, how long has this been going on? 2 years, Marcus whispered. Maybe longer. I kept thinking I could win it back, fix everything before anyone found out. That's when my mother made her own shocking revelation. Harold. She said to my father, I need to tell you something too. I've been putting money aside for Lucy and Michael's college fund for the past 3 years. $500 a month for my household budget because I knew you were treating Eddie's family unfairly. My father looked at her in disbelief. You've been doing what? I've been saving for Eddie's children because I could see what was happening. You were favoring Marcus's family and it wasn't fair. There's $15,000 in a college fund that Eddie doesn't even know about. The revelations kept coming. Patricia admitted that she had been questioning my father's judgment about me for years, but had remained silent to keep family peace. Robert revealed that he had been considering offering me a partnership in his resort business, but had been dissuaded by reports of my supposed financial irresponsibility. Even my cousin David at 16 had been aware of the family dynamics. Everyone could see that Uncle Eddie was getting treated differently, he said with teenage bluntness. We just didn't know why. Now it all makes sense. As the truth unfolded, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. My instincts about the favoritism had been correct, but learning that it was based on deliberate sabotage rather than honest judgment made it somehow worse. Dad. I said finally, I need you to understand something. The Dubai trip wasn't just about proving I had money. It was about proving to my children that their father valued them enough to give them the world, even if their grandfather didn't. My father looked directly at me for the first time since I had entered the room. Eddie, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I let my own fears and Marcus's lies poison my judgment. I treated you like a failure when you were actually the success story. The question now is how we fix this, I said. That's when Marcus made his final confession, the one that would determine our family's future. Eddie, there's one more thing. Dad set up college funds for my 3 children years ago. $50,000 each, earning interest since they were born, but he never set up anything for Lucy and Michael because I convinced him you wouldn't appreciate the gesture. My father's head dropped into his hands. Oh God, what have I done? The room fell silent as everyone processed the full scope of the damage that had been done. Lies, theft, favoritism, and sabotage had nearly destroyed our family, and it would take more than confessions to repair the relationships that had been broken. But for the first time in years at least, we were dealing with truth instead of deception. And maybe, just maybe, truth would be enough to build something better. 2 weeks after that devastating family meeting, I found myself sitting in a conference room at my father's construction company, facing the biggest decision of my professional life. On the table in front of me were 2 contracts, one offering me a full partnership with my father's company, complete with equal authority to Marcus, and a guaranteed path to eventual ownership, and another offering me a senior partnership with Coleman Resort Properties, my Uncle Robert's expanding hospitality empire. The past 14 days had been a whirlwind of revelations, confrontations, and painful honesty. Marcus had entered a residential gambling addiction program and was working with authorities to make full restitution to the business. My father had liquidated personal assets to cover the stolen funds and was meeting with financial advisors to restructure the company's debt. Most importantly, he had called a meeting with our entire extended family to publicly apologize for years of unfair treatment and to announce some major changes. I want everyone to hear this, he had said, standing in front of 23 family members gathered in Patricia's living room. For too long, I let my own pride and fear cloud my judgment about my sons. I believed lies about Eddie's character and capabilities while enabling destructive behavior in Marcus. I treated my grandchildren unequally based on false information, and I nearly destroyed the most important relationships in my life. The apology had been painful, but necessary. But words alone weren't enough to repair the damage that had been done. That's when my father made his most significant gesture of redemption. Effective immediately, I'm establishing equal college funds for all my grandchildren. Lucy and Michael will receive the same $50,000 that Marcus's children already have, plus accrued interest to make up for the lost time. Additionally, I'm adding $25,000 to each fund as an apology for my poor judgment. The room had erupted in surprised murmurs, but he wasn't finished. I'm also restructuring my will to ensure that both my sons inherit equally from my estate, regardless of their involvement in the family business. And I'm asking Eddie to consider joining the company as an equal partner with the authority to implement the changes necessary to make us competitive again. That led to where I sat now, staring at 2 life-changing opportunities. Marcus knocked on the conference room door and entered quietly. His 30 days in rehab had changed him dramatically. He looked healthier, more focused, and carried himself with the humility of someone who had faced his deepest failures and survived. "Can we talk?" he asked. I gestured to the chair across from me. "About what?" "About the fact that I destroyed your life for 2 years because I was afraid of my own inadequacies." We sat in silence for a moment before Marcus continued. "I want you to take the partnership, Eddie. Not because Dad is forcing it, and not because you feel obligated to help fix my mistakes. I want you to take it because you're the only one who can save this company." "What about you?" I'm going to work my way back from the bottom. Project manager, field supervisor, whatever Dad thinks I can handle. I need to prove that I can be trusted with small responsibilities before I ever get big ones again. I looked at my younger brother, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Without the lies and manipulation, without the competition and resentment, he was just a flawed human being, trying to make amends for serious mistakes. The company needs new leadership, I said. Modern marketing, digital presence, sustainable practices. I have ideas that could triple our revenue within 5 years. Then do it. Save the business, and maybe you'll save our family too. That afternoon, I signed the partnership agreement with my father's company. But I also negotiated something unprecedented, a family contract that outlined expectations, boundaries, and consequences for all family members. No more favoritism, no more lies, no more exclusions based on false assumptions. The changes began immediately. I implemented new project management software, hired a social media manager, and began pursuing green construction certifications that opened doors to higher value contracts. Within 6 months, we had secured 3 major commercial projects that would keep the company profitable for the next 2 years. But the most important changes were personal. My father began spending equal time with all his grandchildren. He apologized individually to Lucy and Michael for excluding them from family events and promised that such favoritism would never happen again. He also started attending Michael's soccer games and Lucy's piano recitals with the same enthusiasm he had previously reserved for Marcus's children's activities. Marcus completed his addiction treatment and began making amends to everyone he had hurt through his lies and theft. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and allowed Jennifer to control all family finances while he proved he could be trusted again. My mother used the college fund revelation as an opportunity to become more actively involved in financial decisions. She insisted on transparency in all family expenditures and became the unofficial family accountant to ensure that resources were distributed fairly. Even my ex-wife Sarah was affected by the family transformation. Seeing my father's public apology and the genuine changes in family dynamics, she softened her stance on custody arrangements and began encouraging the children to spend more time with their paternal grandparents. 6 months after the Dubai trip, we held our first truly inclusive family reunion. Instead of an expensive ski vacation that excluded some members, we rented a lake house in New Hampshire where everyone could afford to participate. No one was excluded, no one was favored, and no one was made to feel less valuable than anyone else. The weekend culminated with a campfire on Saturday night, where my father asked to speak to the entire family. "A year ago, I thought I was a good father and grandfather," he said, his voice carrying across the water. "I thought I was making wise decisions about family priorities and financial responsibilities. I was wrong about almost everything." He looked directly at me and my children. "Eddie, Lucy, Michael, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you years of the love and inclusion I denied you based on lies and pride. I can't give you back that lost time, but I can promise you that every day going forward you'll be valued and included as the precious family members you've always been." Lucy, now 9 years old and considerably wiser than her years, walked over to her grandfather and took his hand. "Grandpa," she said in her clear, innocent voice, "our Dubai trip was amazing, but this is better. Because we're all together." My father's eyes filled with tears as he hugged his granddaughter. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Being together is always better." As I watched this scene unfold, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The Dubai vacation had cost me $31,000 and my children's college fund, but it had forced my family to confront truths we had been avoiding for years. The dramatic gesture had been expensive, but the results were priceless. Marcus approached me later that evening as we were cleaning up from dinner. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Spending all that money just to prove a point?" I looked around at our family scattered across the lakeside property, my children playing games with their cousins, without any sense of hierarchy or favoritism, my parents working together to organize tomorrow's activities, Patricia and Robert planning next year's inclusive family traditions. I don't regret a single penny, I said. Sometimes you have to make a dramatic gesture to force people to see the truth, and sometimes the truth is worth more than money. The Dubai trip had been about more than luxury and adventure. It had been about proving to my children that they were worth any sacrifice, any expense, any effort. It had been about refusing to accept unfair treatment just to keep family peace. And ultimately, it had been about forcing a reckoning that saved our family relationships. As we sat around the dying campfire that night, my father raised his coffee mug in a toast. To Eddie, he said, who loved his children enough to move heaven and earth for them, and who loved his family enough to force us all to be better people. The family raised their mugs in agreement, and I felt a warmth that no amount of luxury could have provided. We had been broken, but we had chosen to heal. We had been divided, but we had chosen to unite. And we had learned that true family means equal love, respect, and inclusion for everyone at the table. The lesson that emerged from our journey was profound and universal. Sometimes you have to be willing to disrupt an unfair system before you can build something better in its place. Sometimes love requires courage, and sometimes courage requires sacrifice. But when families commit to truth, equality, and genuine love, even the deepest wounds can heal. Today, 3 years later, our family construction company is more successful than ever with projects throughout New England and a reputation for innovation and integrity. Lucy and Michael have college funds that exceed what I originally saved for them, plus trust funds that will help them pursue whatever dreams they choose. Marcus has been sober from gambling for over 2 years and has earned back much of the trust he lost through patient, consistent effort. Most importantly, no child in our family ever has to wonder whether they're loved enough, valued enough, or included enough. Because we learned that real family wealth isn't measured in money, it's measured in the certainty that you belong, that you're valued, and that someone will always fight for your happiness. My Dubai gamble paid off in ways I never could have imagined, proving that sometimes the most expensive gestures yield the most valuable returns. Have you ever had to make a dramatic gesture to force positive change in your family relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tales about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Share this story with anyone who might need encouragement to fight for fair treatment in their own family situations. Thank you for joining me on this journey of family healing and personal growth. And remember that you're always worth fighting for, no matter what anyone else might tell you. Until next time, keep believing in your own value and never accept less than you deserve from the people who claim to love you.